Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the ADickDid podcast. This is episode 4, and I am your host, Jake, and with me as always, me. Yeah, it's not as funny as I thought it was going to be. Okay, well, this episode is brought to you by martellart.myshopify.com. Yes, that is martellart.myshopify.com to get all your paintings, resin, Christmas needs for anyone in your family or loved ones that likes art. That is everything I craft over there. So if you want another product to support me, supporting me, I will support you with sick art. Moving on to the rest of the episode. We have a mental health awareness episode coming up, and I'm going to start with real stories from me. I'm going to start with a fact of a mental health disorder, something that relates either to my life that I have or someone I know, and if it's a relevant story, I'll tell it. And I think today I'm going to start with bipolar disorder, which affects approximately 2.6% of Americans age 18 and older in a given year. And then the average age at onset for a first manic episode is during the early 20s. So I figured based on this fact, I'll tell you the story of the first manic episode that I remember having. That wasn't like a tantrum as a child, I guess. Uh, I used to throw OCD like on the spectrum level tantrums. So I do worry that I'm also in that boat, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about bipolar. My first bipolar episode was probably when I was 19. I want to say 19 or 20, and I was living with a girlfriend at the time. I was going to college. I was going through a lot, trying to make automotive my career, and I was trying to make a relationship work. Uh, I remember we were fighting over moving to Washington or staying in Oregon. Moving to Washington would have been to be with her family. Staying in Oregon would have been just staying where I was at, anyways. Um, but I don't know why these arguments always got so heated and explosive, but I can very vividly remember her having also a manic episode, crying, pulling her hair out, like slamming her head into the hardwood floor, and I had to like pull her off of the floor so she wouldn't keep like giving herself head damage. And at the same time, this is like she's in the spike, the peak of her freaking out mental like manic episode, and I'm at like the low point of this manic episode for me. And then I remember we switch, and when I start freaking out and losing my shit, I didn't like slam my head into the floor. I would like punch the countertop, or I remember grabbing the fridge with both my hands and just slamming my head into the fridge 2, 3 times, and I think I gave myself a concussion because I was really off for a bit after that. And I just remember having to like sit on the couch, ice on my head, and we ended up like taking care of each other. It was weird. Anytime we had these, this is why we weren't good for each other too, is because we both had like really bad mental health issues, and when we lost our shit, it always escalated worse than it should before it would come back to normal. And like I said, it'd be one of us in the peak of losing their shit, and one of us would be trying to save the other, and then the other one would flip, and it would be the other one saving. Well, the other person lost their shit, and you shouldn't be in a relationship like that. That's not healthy or safe for anyone. But I just think it's so wild that after these explosive episodes, we'd always end up taking care of each other, like laying on the couch together watching a movie. She'd like get ice for me. It was a very interesting time in my life. Um, and then there were other little manic episodes where I would be like, I can't sit and have a conversation, or I'm gonna lose my shit. So I need to go take a walk, or I need to get my head clear. And she would like block the door and not let me out, or like make guilt trip me into staying when really it's like only gonna make the issue worse. And there was this one time where I like stormed out to like leave, and I remember like whipping out of the driveway in my car and like her chasing me down the street, bawling her eyes out. And it's just kind of, it's almost embarrassing to think back that I've had times in my life where I couldn't just work issues out, or she, like, together we couldn't work issues out. Like, you shouldn't be in situations where you don't feel comfortable to fix a problem with the person you're around. You should feel comfortable with the people you're around. You should be able to feel vulnerable with those people, and not like you have to get away or leave a situation to fix it. Yes, alone time, and yes, getting like away from those people is good. You shouldn't always have to go to other people. You should be able to fix things on your own. I'm just saying it, you should never be around people that make you feel uncomfortable for being yourself. And speaking of always being yourself, let's move on to anxiety, which is another one I struggle with on a day-to-day basis. And even making this podcast, I have huge anxiety attacks where I have to like stop recording, sit and just breathe heavy for a minute, almost like I'm hyperventilating because I'm just terrified that I'm gonna fail, or that whatever I put out's just gonna be trash. And I have to like remind myself and tell myself that this is the beginning. I'm starting this, and the beginning is always going to be worse than the end. And a hard beginning maketh a good ending. I need to remind myself that I can do this. And that's something that I don't know if everyone, like a lot of people struggle with, but I know that I do. Um, the anxiety statistic that pops up when you Google anxiety statistics worldwide is an estimated 4% of the global population currently experiences an anxiety disorder. In 2019, 301 million people in the world had an anxiety disorder, making anxiety disorders the most common of all mental disorders. So, I at least I know I'm not alone. There's at least 300 million other people dealing with anxiety. And even just googling things like that can give me a little bit more confidence, or remind myself that I'm not alone in this world. Um, the story that I will tell based on anxiety is I used to make YouTube videos. I used to make them pretty regularly and frequently. I would just play a couple rounds of like Call of Duty Ghosts or Halo. I made just a couple review videos, and the review videos are kind of what sparked the anxiety in me, because I felt like I was just putting out opinions that nobody cared about, nobody gave a shit about. I was just speaking on my experience, and I don't know, for some reason I always have this thought in the back of my mind that nobody cares about my experience, no one cares what I have to say. So I had this GTA 5 review that I didn't realize was this bad when I made it, but I did kind of drone on and on and on about the same like three issues for a really long time. And that got to me to the point where I made less and less YouTube videos, and then I eventually just kind of quit again. Even though I knew I was pretty good at that stuff. I was good at editing, I was good at picking good images for thumbnails, creating good fonts for the thumbnails to like draw people in. I I have a knack for creative things. I'm a very artistic person. That's why I make resin art. That's why I make paintings. I'll do anything creative because that's just what I'm good at. And I failed a couple of times, and I had a couple of my closest friends really make fun of me and roast me hard about the GTA 5 review video, and I don't know why I let that get to me, but I kind of quit and I gave up because I let other people, uh, I don't know, to get under my skin, and that's not something I should do. I should be proud of myself for what I can create and create better stuff and better stuff and better stuff and not give up because I didn't do great one time. And that's something we need to remind ourselves. Just because we don't do good one time doesn't make us. Just because we fuck up doesn't make us a failure. It makes us human. We all make mistakes. We all need to grow and learn from them. And one thing I learned from that experience is I need to keep making what I love making, which is art or creative things, content. I love making videos. I love making this podcast. Honestly, it has challenged me in ways I didn't think I was going to be challenged, and I am really dedicated to learning and making this better for you guys. And I really hope you guys are enjoying listening. Thank you so much for that. Let's move on to another. Let's move on to ADHD. ADHD doesn't really need a story or even an explanation, but I'm going to do my best to explain it. ADHD is like you start a project, you start another project, you start another project. You forget about the first project. You get 75% of the way done with the second project. You finish the first project except for like the finishing tweaks and touches to like really polish it. You go back to the third project which you realize you did like 80% of it and then just didn't finish it up for some reason. And then you're 27 and you realize you've done 15 projects total in your entire life, and here you are with almost nothing to show for it because you can't finish one thing at a time. You can't do one project and then another project and then another project. It's you do a project and then you do 3 projects and then you do 7 projects and then you finish one project out of 7. Okay. So, the fun fact, if you Google ADHD, is an estimated 8.7 million adults in the U.S. have ADHD. Approximately 2.6% or 139.8 million of adults worldwide have persistent ADHD from childhood, which includes individuals who experience childhood onset paired with continued ADHD symptoms into adulthood. I am part of whatever one of those percent numbers is. I had it at birth and I ended up with it as an adult too. I've tried medication, I've tried all sorts of coping mechanisms, breathing exercises, exercise, all sorts of stuff. I've tried marijuana, that kind of focuses me to a degree, but it could also be a problem if I don't figure out how to manage that. I guess I will give you a small story with ADHD, and it's when I got diagnosed at like 13, I want to say 14. I couldn't I couldn't swallow pills at that age. So whenever I needed like headache medicine or anything, I needed chewables or something that would dissolve, or I would break it up and put it in food or something. But for some reason, my brain would not allow me to swallow pills. And I remember getting diagnosed with ADHD, going home, having this medication that had to be a swallowed pill. I wasn't able to put it in food. I just had to the way to take it was to swallow it. Can't remember what the medication is now, but I remember my mom getting angry with me about it and forcing one of the pills into my fucking throat and making me swallow it. And on, I needed to do it, but it was a little traumatic to me. But here we are. I'm fine. But I remember go, going from perfectly normal fine day to sitting on the couch, and it felt like I'm staring up at the corner of the ceiling and the walls connecting, and it feels like the room is expanding infinitely and also colliding into itself infinitely, giving me the worst claustrophobic weird sensation where I felt like I had so much power because I had all this space, and then I also felt like it was getting closed off at the same time. I've never felt like that in my entire life, other than that one experience, and I'm very glad that I haven't, because that was not fun by any means. And since then, I have taken other medications for bipolar or ADHD or whatever because I wanted to try it again in adulthood and see if it really affected me. And it actually did helped me kind of control my emotions for a while, and then it kind of got me to a point where I felt like it was controlling me more than I was controlling it. So I'm now back off of medication again, and I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm at. I definitely am lacking a little bit of the routine and the structure that the medication gave me, the fundamentals, where it would like I kind of had like a thing going, a flow. Now days are pretty much day by day, like how's it gonna go? And I don't know, I like it better that way. Um, I think it's better to experience my emotions in the moment rather than like bottle them up and then lose my shit, which I feel like is what I did before the medication. And I feel like the medication made me better at like handling things in the moment for about a year. And then I kind of fell back into that same problem I was having. And now that I'm off medication, I don't know, somehow I'm better at just communicating in the moment because there's like nothing stopping my brain from just being like, hey, this isn't okay right now. Um, the fun fact for depression, or for me, it's major depressive disorder, is what I was diagnosed for in like 2020 or 2019 or something. I want to say it was before the pandemic. Um, and that was kind of a hard thing to hear because the way they say it, it makes it sound so much worse than it really is. Uh, in reality, it's just depression. I have depression, and it sucks. It's not something I can just turn off and on. It is something I have to just deal with day by day. If I realize I'm feeling not myself, usually I have a friend or two I can reach out to and fix that. Even if I am afraid to, usually I have someone that I can be vulnerable with. We're gonna move on from that. I don't need to get too deep into that shit. Uh, the fun fact for major depressive disorder is in 2020, an estimated 14.8 million U.S. adults aged 18 or older had at least one major depressive episode. Um, 14.8 million is fucking ridiculous. And then around 39% of adults with major depressive episodes did not receive treatment. I think that's batshit fucking crazy. 39% is an insane number to have not been treated. I definitely think we need to do better at reaching out to our friends and telling them that they matter to us. And it it seems stupid, or sometimes we get stuck in our heads like we're not going to be the person to have that happen in our lives, or we're not going to be the person to change someone's life. But in reality, we are all affecting and changing each other with every choice, decision we make. Everything you say, even if it doesn't necessarily affect them in the moment or hurt their feelings or whatever, everything you do affects the people around you. And I think that's something we lose track of nowadays. Um, Even just texting your friend in the morning, hey, I miss you, or hey, I think you looked good last night, or just saying anything to get contact with the people that matter to you shows them that they matter. And even the tiniest gestures can turn someone's life around or make them feel appreciated, loved, cared for. All things that we should all feel. And if you can't uh, provide that, I hope that you have people in your life that can provide that for you until you're in that place. Because I sure know that we can't always be the positive person. We can't always be the person providing for others. But I do know that if provided the love and support and the care, it will uplift people and make them, bring them to the point where they can. There's always an exception to the rule, but for the most part, if you take care of people, they'll take care of you. It's not rocket science. It's just nurture and caring and love. For my story relating to depression, I think it's more or less just going to be me breaking down habits and things I noticed I do when I get hella depressed. And hopefully you can maybe look out for when these things happen to you, and it can help you reach out when you notice you're falling into these black holes or patterns of negative energy. Uh, One thing I notice I start doing when I really am like depressed and want to be alone is I I'll fib or I'll lie to my friends. I'll tell them I'm sick or I'm not feeling well, and that's not okay. I shouldn't lie to them. Well, I guess to me, I don't feel like I'm lying because I'm saying I don't feel well, and that's not necessarily untrue. But in reality, I should just open up to them and be like, I'm not in a good place mentally, because it at least allows them to understand where I'm at in a more realistic way. And even if they don't know how to reach out or do something, usually it just allows them to accurately handle the situation, which is really how we should handle everything. Just because it's not someone's business or just because something isn't necessarily their information to know, it's still important to give people the most accurate representation so they can handle it the best. Because I notice a lot of my friends will say like one thing and then they get mad when someone handles it differently than they wanted. And it's like, well, if you had told them the truth or the realist part of that you could, they could at least handle it more realistically and not bothered you. And that's something that I have to deal with too, is because I'll tell someone like, hey, I don't feel well. Like my mom, I'll tell my mom, hey, I don't feel well. I don't want to hang out, and she'll be like, oh, do you need soup or do you need this? And it's like I don't want to go through the motions of explaining to her that I don't feel sick. I just feel mentally ill and I don't really want to talk about it. But then I notice I get frustrated when in reality I could have just told her, hey, I'm not in a good headspace. I just need to be alone. I just need the privacy for a little bit. And in reality, that all that does is spread accurate information that helps people understand and adapt to a situation properly. So no one gets agitated, no one gets irritated. Everyone just kind of moves the way they should, flows, so to speak, with life. Um, and that's one thing I definitely have issues with is not just giving the full story sometimes, which is very hypocritical of me because I also get irritated when other people don't tell me the full story, especially when I know I'm not getting the full story. Because it's like, hey, if you just tell me the truth or the full story, I can handle the situation to the best of my ability and not be a bother. And I don't know. I feel like I'm a real hypocrite when it comes to that stuff because I don't always want to tell everyone everything. But in reality, if I tell them the truth and they tell me the truth, then everything is copacetic, everything's honest, and no one's gonna get hurt. And the last thing I want is anyone to get hurt. Or actually, I don't. Sorry, the last thing I want. I never want anyone to get hurt ever. I shouldn't say the last thing because I'm not a negative. I really am not a negative person. I love people. I want people to be healthy and be hydrated, take care of themselves. I want people to succeed in this world. And I'm really hoping that this podcast and explaining my problems will open up other people's eyes to the things they're doing in there. Some of the other things I do when I get into really bad depressive episodes is I'll start eating less frequently, if at all. I'll definitely go a day or two without actually eating real food, and that's not good for you. You definitely shouldn't do that. A lot of problems I have contain like getting agitated with people and people's behavior. I have a huge ego complex, and a lot of the things I get irritated or irritated about are things I think I could have done better. So when I get depressed, I will just isolate myself as much as possible to not get myself like to try to justify not getting frustrated at things when in reality I should just handle my issues head on, and then it would allow me to fix the problem and get out of my depressive episode because I'm seeing a positive come out of a situation where I feel down. I could probably go on and on, but 25 minutes seems like a good length for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Addicted podcast. I would like to mention again at the end of the episode that if you are in the interest of buying anything artistic for your friends or family members, you can buy my resin art at martellart.myshopify.com, martellart.myshopify.com, and I have all sorts of things. I can make custom art or custom pieces for you guys. If you want like a glow in the dark brain and a pyramid made of resin, I can do that. If you want like a Joker from a deck of cards in a thing of resin, I can do it. Keys, whatever. I do it all. Um, Thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you'll come back next week on Wednesday at 11 to catch another episode of the Addicted Podcast, starring me, Jake. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Goodbye.